This is the Sockendaga Lake in upstate New York. It is really calm today. I've been here when it's very windy and there are people parasailing or on their surfboards with a sail. I'm not sure what that's called. But this is just incredibly beautiful. The colors across the lake, I think it might be snowing over there. This is a man-made lake, I believe in the early 1900s. So there is actually some houses under here. I think there's a church under here, but they flooded the area to create a lake. These stripes of snow are pretty cool. I think it might indicate where the waves come up when it is windy and melts the snow up to the point where the wave goes. And it looks like there's several levels of waves going on here, if I'm correct. There's only little pieces of ice right now. We've had snow, a very little really cold weather, like in the zeros or something. I believe that there's a nearby lake, Cosby Lake. I believe they have ice, but it's thin. But this doesn't seem to have any ice at all. I love the ice formations. Really like framing them with the camera because you kind of get these mini paintings, these mini compositions, abstract compositions, I would say. But the colors and the shapes happen on their own, and then you get to arrange them how you like to create a cool picture. Hi everybody. The book we're talking about today is The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain by Annie Murphy Paul. When I first heard the title, The Extended Mind, my first thought was that there's more to our minds and our brains than we are using or that we know. And I think that's probably true. And certainly if you have beliefs in the metaphysical or universe or unconscious thoughts, unconscious thinking, that you would say that was true. That was sort of along the lines that I was thinking the book was going to be. However, the book is actually about how we think outside of ourselves in order to come to decisions. You may say, Cosby, what's the difference? Well, some of the things that she talks about, for example, we use social resources to make decisions. You might talk to your friends about a decision. Let's say you want to move to another country and you're not really sure if that's the right decision. You might start reading books about it or watching videos about it, or you might talk to your friends or family about it. So you're actually processing outside of yourself. So it is thinking outside of the mind. But it is actually a very earthly level, which is fine. It's great. It's just that was my confusion when I saw the title. But the author does offer quite a few great categories of thinking processes, which we will talk about. The three main categories that we think with are our bodies, our surroundings, and our relationships. Those are the three big topics. And then there's 8 subtopics, which I'm going to tell you, I've had to write them down because I couldn't memorize them, but I have them right here on the paper. One of them is you offload information. You write it down on paper. Maybe you write pros and cons or a list or something like that. You're literally putting it out here to organize it in a physical way. Another way is that we would transform information into an artifact. So maybe you make a model. If you're trying to build a house, you might make a little model, or you might just, again, build a, like, a model is the only thing I can really think of, but I would think some sort of an artifact. Maybe you would plan it out. You'd actually take a tape measure and actually go in your backyard and plan out how the actual dimensions of this house that you want to build, even though you're not going to build it in that backyard. Another way, it's kind of interesting, to alter our own state. Sometimes if you get in the car and you drive around, you have new things that you're looking at, you're kind of altering your everyday state. Having a meal, maybe working out, or doing something where you're biologically changing yourself from your status quo in order to get new information about how you feel about the world. And that's the fourth one, is to embody physical activity. I know if you, some people will go for a run and be able to think things through. You know, if you're running, maybe you talk to yourself or something, figure something out. And it also might put you in a more relaxed state where you can think more clearly. The fifth category is similar to the one where you make an object, and it's where you spatialize. You would use charts and tables or diagrams to spatially figure out what you're thinking. And, you know, I've actually found myself doing that not just with an idea that has to do with the tangible world, but also thinking, you know, sort of saying, well, here I am on this, here I am here, and if I was to do this, and kind of drawing silly little arrows, just sort of really just thinking it out with a pen. And I think that's that would be part of that kind of thinking. The sixth way that she describes is called Re-Socialize. And I had mentioned before that we might talk to friends to find out what they think, say, oh my gosh, do not do that, it's such a silly idea, or oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. But this number 6 goes into a deeper area, and that is you in your society, and the rules of your society, and the rules of your family, things like that. And I think that that is a really interesting topic, because, as you know, people are always kind of breaking family traditions, or they're pushing or expanding on the family rules or social rules. You know, what's taboo, what isn't. I personally believe that there are universal truths, that there are a few truths that are absolutely true and real, and you can push all you want against them and you're still gonna lose. But like, the first thing that comes to my mind is that movie and play called Fiddler on the Roof, where the 3 daughters are not going with the traditional roles. It takes, I don't know if you've seen that movie, it takes place in Eastern Europe, and the father is very merry and happy, but he wants a traditional life for his family. And the daughters, you know, traditions fall away because the traditions take place in time, and the time changes. And not only did the daughters decide not to follow the tradition, it was also during a time when they were pushed out of their homes by the military and things, and that also changed the tradition, that changed the lifestyle. So things like that happen in societies and families. So I think that in the back of our minds, we really do think about, if I make this decision, how does that fit in with everything around me? And that can be supportive, but it can also maybe be suffocating. So if you're saying, well, no one in my family ever did this before, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose my society or my neighbors, what are they going to think of me if I do this? So so bouncing your ideas off, even if you're not actually talking to your community, but knowing, like, if I go in this direction or that direction, that's going to happen. I think that might be, to me, that feels like the strongest structure in decision making, is how does it fit in the group that I'm in, or the world that I'm in. One thing that she notices, it's also a process, but it's also kind of a fact, is that we tend to think in what she calls cognitive loops. And that's where you think about something for a while, and then maybe you get distracted and you're thinking about something else. Or you think about something for a while and you come to an obstacle or a deadlock, a dead end. So you stop thinking about it. So we think in these loops. It's not necessarily a straight line. And that's one time that we are really thinking like this is when we are daydreaming. And I recently did a personal voice message for my patrons on my Patreon group and my Patreon page about daydreaming, and about how daydreaming is like half conscious, half unconscious without being asleep. And when we're in that state, that it's pretty free thinking and we can imagine so many more things and think things through. So this author feels that daydreaming is actually quite good for you. And one of the interesting facts in my voice message on my Patreon page is that as humans, we are daydreaming almost 50% of the day. We're either reminiscing or planning or thinking or in this kind of haze 50% of the day. So if you find yourself daydreaming, that's great. Not while you're driving or anything. but daydreaming really is helpful to sort out all the decisions that you might want to be making, or plans, or sort of envisioning your future. The final category, it's not really a category, it's more her advice, is to create good thinking situations. And you may have a favorite place, a favorite desk, some people like to get in the bathtub. Wherever you do your thinking, it's really good to have a place like that, and where you can return to sort through, and not just ideas, but any kind of healing you might need to do, or trauma. I know during this pandemic, it's overwhelming, and maybe just get in the bathtub and just kind of think about good things, and sort of as a healing place too. And one interesting thing that I heard about trauma that I'm going to pass on here is that trauma is so overwhelming that you can't really progress, and that a side effect of trauma is stagnancy. So if you feel like you've been stagnant for a while, you might want to take a look at that and see maybe you've been through something difficult or painful that is stopping you from moving forward because you haven't got to a point where you can function well. I don't think things are ever completely healed or completely resolved. I think they're always kind of ongoing, but at least the major part of it where you can function well will be manageable, and then there will be no more stagnancy. So if you can create a really great place or situation, maybe anywhere, maybe you could be anywhere, but you happen to have your cup of coffee or your pet dog, or you light your candles or whatever safely, then then she recommends that. My personal insights for the book, I think that the things that she's been talking about, these topics, I think we do them unconsciously. I know that I recognized several of them that I was already doing, but didn't really know it. And it's just kind of interesting to pinpoint that and to see that. I think the most outstanding thing for me is that this author is a science writer. She's a well-known science writer for newspapers, books, everything. And there is no discussion about the metaphysical. None. And it really surprised me, because the metaphysical does exist. There is a metaphysical. And whether you call it luck or chance or whatever, things happen that you didn't know were going to happen that are oftentimes good. And that none of that was really taken into account. There was no mention of universal power or universal anything that might either guide you or direct you, or whatever your beliefs may fall into. So in that sense, I found the book to be a very practical manual for being on Earth, and I would say it was more of a psychological viewpoint, but it kind of wasn't. She really was talking about very tangible, practical things. Like, she did not go into the shared unconscious, which, if you're familiar with Carl Jung, was his theory that we, at some level, we all have an area where we can kind of sense each other or feel each other or think about each other. Maybe you've had a phone call and you were just thinking about that person, or maybe you had the same idea at the same time, that sort of thing. And I know that happens a lot with family members. So there was no mention of any of that. Now, I'm not saying that she should have mentioned that. I was very surprised, because most of the things that I've been reading and looking at do include that. So I was actually very surprised that there was no that kind of a depth. Overall, I would recommend the book. I think it's very useful. She does talk a lot about other people's studies, other scientists' studies, to support what she's saying. I did not completely read all about those studies. I just took her word for it and then sort of thought about what I thought about it. And but she does talk quite a bit about other people's studies, which makes the book kind of hefty. But I ended up reading through the ideas that she had, and I did kind of browse some of the descriptions of the studies. But if you don't want to read about the studies, it actually would, this book would read fairly quickly. You could just skim through and get some of her ideas and think about them. Otherwise, I would love to hear what you have to say about these ideas. Please comment below in the comments section. Be sure to like the video, and if you're on YouTube, subscribe. Or if you'd like to join us on my Patreon page, on Patron of the Arts online group, it's patreon.com/Cosby Gibson. I will leave a link below to that. It's a group of us, our get together. It's pay what you wish, and you receive videos and songs and personal messages, and it's just lots of fun. We have a great time over there, and it would be wonderful to have you be part of that. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.